Welcome back to my channel. It's Banter with Oye, and we're still going deep into the book by Maxilian, Oil, Politics, and Violence, discusses Nigeria's military coup culture between 1966 and 1976. Now, today we'll be talking about why or how the Nigerian military became politicized. Now, the military became politicized due to three reasons, according to the book. First, it was because they started bringing in university graduates. Now, personally, I don't feel like this inherently is a bad thing. But from the military perspective, at that time, I see how it could be a bad thing because at the time, a lot of people in school, the schools were actively part of activism, so it made sense that students that have gone through the school were already exposed to a lot of information about what is wrong with the government today. So them coming into the military is like they are coming to, contaminate the military with their own agendas, even though they are right, even though they could see all the unfairness that the government was doing. Now, the second reason was the government used the government always used the army to solve crises that they started. You know, that means they were radicalizing the army members that participated in these things. So they will cause problems. They will now go and use the army to quell it. For example, the chief crisis, which we will get into. So they bring some of these people and then introduce them to these conflicts to help them quell the crisis that they started. You don't expect these people are human at some point, so it's not easy to be a military person because sometimes you have to do things that go against your own value as a human being, your core values. So I respect them. It's not the easiest thing, to do. Lastly, politicians were meddling and they are still meddling in the affairs of the military today. Right. Now, Southern soldiers, because they were educated, prefer, technical units and officer corps. Officer corps is like people that are primarily involved in, trainings, administrative duties, and, making strategic decisions and stuff like that. Whereas Northern soldiers, you'll find them in the infantry units, and they weren't as educated as Southerners. Now, at independence, the Igbos constituted about 60% of people in the military corps. Guess who didn't like this? Northern leaders. These people were the people in power and they dominated the civilian government. But they were worried that Igbos dominated the officers' corps. Like, what level of superiority complex can you have? So they try to block the predominance of the Igbos in officer corps. Like, why? You're already leading, you have power, but you can't let things go. Now, they complained to the British, but the British ignored them, saying they resisted the introduction of Western education. So there's nothing they can do about that. They didn't want to get educated. Basically, you can't eat your cake and have it, or have your cake and eat it. How is that saying? How does that saying go? Your cake and have it, have your cake. You get my point. You can't say you don't want education and then complain when people that want education get the better jobs. And then now you're worried that they're going to kill you. Like, anyways, rather than wait for people that were educated from the north to join the army, what did they do? They lowered the bar of recruitment so that their own people can come in. They also introduced this also led to the introduction of regional quota system. So now the north had 50%. This is the recruitment process. They had 50% recruitment. Then the remaining 50% was shared between the east and the west. It's like, now, why was this possible? This was possible because the defense minister, minister of state for the army, minister of defense permanent secretary, and deputy permanent secretary were all northerners. Everybody was a northerner, and the same. It's like, again, it speaks to how they were saying that the Igbos thought they were master race. Again, you people think you are above everybody, at least based on what we have in this book, based on history. Now, this quota system led to the enlisting of Ibrahim Babangida, Abdul Salam, Murtala Mohammed. Now, Southerners started fearing that Northern-led government was trying to expand its political dominance. into the army, that they were sacrificing, you know, merits, like people that had good quality for his own representation in the army. And now this is a justified fear. This is not a fear that has no basis. This is a fear that is justified because you lower the bar so that your own people can get in. You don't care if they are worthy of that recruiting policy, but just so that you are there and somebody is not more than you who brought them in. Now, there's a shady part. They said in this book, it said this lowering brought about Sonny Abacha and BS Dimka. What does that mean? Does that mean that if they didn't lower the bar, then suddenly Abacha won't have been able to? I, I object to that. I object to that. Now, the lowering of the educational bar is one of the many grievances of the people that perpetrated the first coup. This was one of the reasons why they were not happy about it. Now, there was also rivalry between, those military guys that say that trained at Sandhurst, and that's the elite military, Royal Elite Military Academy, and those that trained in regular cadet schools. Now, then Ademi Logo and My Malari also, those ones didn't cooperate with the JOC. Ademilogun always felt like it not only felt like he was supposed to be the GOC, he voiced the opinion, which clearly tells you that he's a person that doesn't deserve the position of GOC because you are not a humble person. You definitely won't have been a good leader. Lastly, there were a lot of southern soldiers in the north and a lot of northern soldiers in the south. All this seems like, oh, so that there is no favoritism, or so that people are not making sentimental judges because they are people. At the same time, it's the same reason why some people will be able to do whatever they please because, hey, I'm not related to this person. I can treat them as I please, you know. But at the same time, it's something that would help people from the north, get introduced to the culture of the south and realize that these people are not so bad. It will have, it's just a very dicey situation because this was a good way for northern soldiers to be introduced to southern people and southern soldiers to be introduced to northern people. And then when they go back to their places, they can say, oh, these people are not that bad. Well, I guess it still didn't work. Now, these people from the military started complaining that there were a lot of, bookish people who they thought they came to the army for the wrong reasons. Again, these people already know about how the government is behaving and they are now joining the army. So these recent graduates were Lieutenant Colonel Banjo, Major Ademoyega, Major Ifejuna. All of them had links to the University of Ibadan. Now, University of Ibadan was an hotbed, was very, very prolific in activism. And most of these guys, they were pro OPGA, which is the coalition of NCNC and AG, that's the Eastern and Western Party. Now, Chukwuemeka Ojukwu was the first graduate to obtain combatant mission, and then there was an Olufemi that was the second. Now, the army had 7 graduates that had combatant mission. All 7 of them were Southerners. 3 to 4 of them were conceptually or physically involved in the first school. Now, Agoyin Yorosi complains that about this sophistication of these people that joined the army. He felt like these were politicians in army uniform. He wanted soldiers, that they were sending in politicians in army uniform. And these people too, they had intellectual arrogance. They had the way they carried themselves. They felt like they were smarter than the people that were in the military. And being that they were definitely young, they would definitely have some level of arrogance. And given the things that the government was doing, they also felt like, oh, they were not good enough. And most of them, they were also they were against the continuous imprisonment of Awolowo. Now, think about it. Awolowo is one of those people that also always felt like these people were not very educated. So they sort of have the same mentality, if you put it that way. Now, at the end of the day, the Sardinia told the defense minister to stop recruiting graduates. Now, Southern soldiers were more politicized than Northern soldiers because now politicians in power were Northerners. So they had a good relationship with Northern soldiers. They also they not they they were they relaxed, lowered the bar of recruitment, which gave these Northern soldiers their military career. It only made sense. And these Northern soldiers, they not only lowered the bar, they also followed through with their military career. For example, my Malari's school teacher is northern governor. So he was following up with him to see his progress in the military. So the northern soldiers were benefiting from the government, unlike today, where you say this government will favor me or is the government is the government favoring you. That time the government did favor them. So they had no reason be to be hostile towards the government, whereas the southern soldiers had they had every reason to be. They opposed the imprisonment of Awolowo. They did not like corruption. They didn't like that they were creating crisis and they couldn't solve it. They just felt like everything was just corrupted and that particularly things would not change even with election, given the last election, given how it was it was mad with violence and all sort of voter intimidation. So, and the relationship that northern soldiers had with northern politicians, southern soldiers did not have it. So now, on top of all of that, on top of that, civilians were now whispering in their ears, take charge, change things. Can't you see the country is on fire? Can't you see the country is on fire? You people should do something about this. So they listened and they decided that their goal was to overthrow the government and, release Awolowo and make him the president. The question to you is, do you think if Awolowo became president of Nigeria, things would have changed? Do you think Nigeria would be in a better place today? Would it have made any difference? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Thank you so much for coming to this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time. Bye.